All right, we are live on Off the Cuff, part of the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network and live on the Loudmouth MMA YouTube page. I am Mike Heck. As you can see, I'm joined as always by Mr. Drake Riggs. He's all over the place. How are you, sir?
You know, Mike, I'm okay. I'm a little sad though, and I'll tell you why. Because I never thought that I would want Nikita Krylov versus Johnny Walker to go to a decision, man. I never thought I would want to see that. But I do, and it makes me really sad because I want to see Davidson with a Larry David haircut. Shout out to Between the Links the other night.
Yes. Oh, by the way, I saw you tease, I don't know if it was last night, your super secret piece that we've all been waiting for with a fighter or someone within the sport that we'll never guess in a million years. Did that get dropped yet?
Yes, I released that a couple hours ago. And it was with Mac Malley, if you know who Mac Malley is. Mac Malley MMA on Twitter. I talked to him and shared his story, and just, you know, it's crazy how he has so many followers just by being himself. I thought it was a unique thing. Check it out. It's very entertaining to read, you know, all the nonsense that you get out of what you'd expect a Twitter famous person. So
yeah, no kidding. Very cool. Mac Malley is a great follow. And we got Mr. Kyle Steele, Mr. Loudmouth MMA himself. No Craig Allen tonight. How are you, sir?
Doing great, man. Hopefully I don't cough a whole bunch. I got a cough, guys. I don't know. Is that how they start? Is that how it started in the stand? Well, I think it was like a cough, and then it just kind of worked its way down from there.
Yes, it's like the respiratory starts with the respiratory issue, does it not? And then it kind of spreads like wildfire.
Here she is, baby.
Are you quarantined in the Loudmouth Studios now? Is that what's happening?
I am. Yep, I'm surrounded. Listen, this is a lot better than my old basement. So if I'm going to be trapped in a basement, it'd rather be this one.
Well, I hope you feel better, sir.
Ohio, Kyle?
I am, yes, sir.
Okay, so they're shutting down too, aren't they?
They are. It's Cuyahoga County, though. It's pretty far away from me.
Well, before obviously coronavirus is the big topic of the day. It is just getting bigger and bigger. It's now a pandemic, according to the World Health Organization, but we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Let's talk about UFC 248. I know we talked a lot about it on Between the Links on Monday. We wanted to sort of give it a day break, give it like 24 hours to settle a little bit and then go back and talk to it, because it's hard. To be honest, sitting in this chair, it's very difficult to talk about the same things like 2 nights in a row. So I'm glad we got to take a little reprieve in between. But I want to start off with the main event between Israel Adesanya and Yoel Romero. You guys at this point, and anybody watching right now or anybody listening right now, you know that fight was what it was. It sucked. It was a weird fight. It was boring. It was everything we hoped it wouldn't be and more. But at the end, Israel Adesanya is still the UFC middleweight champion. So Drake, I want to start with you, something we didn't really touch on, because I didn't realize it was that much of a debate until I talked to a bunch of people about it today. How did you score that fight?
I scored it 1-2-5 for Romero, which seems like the most likely, you know, rounds that he won, and, you know, the opinions I've seen, and that's what he believes that he won as well. And I think it comes down to, it sounds like the second round for a lot of people. I mean, this isn't a fight I've rewatched since that one, because, you know, not the greatest one to do that to. And, you know, as for that, I'm not super surprised it went how it did. I mean, we've seen Yoel be very defensive in the past, but it's one of those things where I was very surprised to hear that not a single judge gave it to Romero. I thought that we'd at least get a split on that one, just because, you know, very close. But I think that, you know, those Romero, I thought, you know, I felt pretty good about him getting the win. I mean, I'm not mad either way. It's one of those things where, okay, not a robbery. First of all, let's always throw that out there. Not a robbery. But even though if you feel one way for the other guy, like pretty strongly, even though not much happened with just what they did and everything, I feel like you can't be mad either way, because it was, you know, as uneventful as it was. People relating it to like the Silva latest fights and the Maia fight, which I think, man, those were pretty bad. I'd have to go back and rewatch those to see which was worse, but I don't want to do that. It's a torture kind of comparison game to play there. But yeah, I think I had it for Romero, but, you know, it's nothing to complain about.
Kyle, what do you think? How did you score it? What were your thoughts on the fight overall?
Yeah, I mean, so I scored it 2-5 for Romero, but I mean, there's giant quotation marks around that. I mean, it's just like, this is why it's hard to grade fights beforehand, right? I mean, I get it's not like you couldn't see a pathway for this, but you'd have to have some type of hindsight, I think, to really see it play out like this. Once it happens, you can use that hindsight to go, okay, well, it makes sense. Counter, and one of the counters is a very strange counter, and then the other counter is kind of an Anderson Silva type counter. So it's like, I guess it makes sense that the fight went real weird. But certainly prior to the fight, I don't think anybody was, from my knowledge, had that narrative that this was just going to be a la Derek Lewis Ngannou fight where people are just not wanting to engage, not wanting to pull the trigger, not wanting to, you had some flurries from Yoel, but even those were all but pointless. I mean, there was a couple shots that got landed, but I certainly would have been absolutely furious if that fight would have resulted in a belt exchanging hands. I mean, that would have been just one of the most ridiculous things to ever happen, even if Yoel won all 5 rounds, like by landing one extra punch each round. I mean, that shit better just become a no contest at that point, and just everything stays the same. You can't win a belt off of that performance, period. I argue with Fred all the time because he makes all of these ridiculous rules about title fights, and of course I always argue with them because it's like, wait, dude, it's a normal fight. Just because there's a title doesn't matter. Here's where it does matter. If the fight looks like this, then it matters who exchange. You cannot have a belt exchange hands on a BS fight like that. There's just no way. Like, you could not justify anybody. No one won that fight. The fans didn't win the fight. The UFC. The UFC didn't win the fight because the problem is, even if you booked a rematch, because now maybe they hate each other more, and you try to go that angle, who on earth would be like, you know what, maybe it'll be different the second time, and maybe it will, or it just is going to look identical, or it'll be Adesanya going, oh, okay, I don't want to be boring again. And then he gets himself in trouble because he doesn't fight the gameplay he needs to fight, which that doesn't prove who's better at that point, because who's better is who won that night. And I think Adesanya, in my mind, pretty clearly won. And it wasn't even a split decision on the judges. I thought if you're scoring it for a traditional MMA fight, he won. And he won by not allowing himself to get off of a game plan. And ultimately, that's what makes you a better fighter, right? I mean, on some level, you proved you're better because you kept to the game. You didn't listen to the crowd. You didn't care. You just kept on that line. So I don't know. I guess kudos for doing that. But that's not what the sport is all about. And I think you got to be able to put it on the line. What's the point of winning the belt or retaining the belt if in the process of doing so, you alienate yourself? What's the point? I mean, I guess you could get more money just because you have the belt. I understand that, but man, is that really? I don't know. Maybe it is.
Funny, I didn't even think about how could that fight have gotten worse? And I think Kyle said it. If Yoel Romero became the new champion, what a nightmare that would be. I mean, listen, you could score it however you want. It was just a bad fight. I scored it for Adesanya. I gave him 3, 4, and 5. Romero 1 and 2. It was very reluctant. I've never recapped a main event title fight and wrote 11 words in a round like I did in round 1. They're circling. Romero hasn't moved. Romero counters with a big punch. The horn sounds. That
was the round.
The whole freaking recap. 10-9 Romero for landing single shot. Holy shit. What a bad fight that was. But
yeah.
I mean,
you literally had someone, sorry to interrupt. You literally had somebody win a round simply because they landed a shot. That was it. There wasn't a flurry. It was like they landed 2 punches to the other guy's 1. So therefore, he got the round. I mean, that's just absurd.
There's an old cliche. We hear it all the time. Styles make fights, yada, yada. But this is the true, Saturday night was a true definition of that, because Ioane and Jacek and Zhang Weili, those two are made for each other. You saw it in the fight. We're going to talk about that more in a second. But Yoel Romero and Israel Adesanya, not made for each other at all. Those two, they shouldn't even be in the same room together, let alone the same octagon together, because it's just bad. It's just not good. So you have it.
I feel like I don't want to see the fight again, but if it was to ever happen, I would prefer with like 3 rounds. Maybe it would give more incentive,
1 round.
Just 1 round. We'll put him in a Phoenix Rising bout.
Put him in the Victor fight.
Yeah. But just to counter Kyle's point a little bit too about Adesanya sticking to his game plan. I mean, isn't Romero's game plan also kind of that counter heavy, defensive guy in that one? Obviously not the smartest, but I think, that was his game plan in the fight as well, which he obviously stuck to.
Well, my thing is he stuck to it, but he lost. So it's like, Adesanya stuck to the game plan and he didn't get goaded in and he won. Therefore, that proved that he was better. So that fight never needs to happen again. Yeah. Right? We just proved it. He's better. He was able to stick to this bullshit game plan, and the other guy did too. And in doing so, one guy came out on top. Boom, we're done. There's nothing ever to see ever again. What's the point? Like,
shouldn't have been made in the first place.
And that's what really is goofy about this is the fight never needed to happen in the first place. Why take the fight if this is the way you're going to go about it? That's what I'm trying to understand from, and I'm not gonna. I don't even know how Mike is pronouncing Adesanya. I'm just going to keep saying it the way I'm doing it, and it is what it is.
Adesanya.
Adesanya.
It's like I diss Anya.
The problem is when I say it like that, it makes me sound like I was an extra on Lion King. So I diss Anya. The only way I can say it is to really give like a punch to it. I diss Anya. I'll try to do it. All right.
Okay, I think they're both right though. I think they're both right.
Then I'll stick with Adesanya. How about that?
There you go.
That's what's in my brain. So, where was I going? I just lost my train of thought. I had a point that I was making, and it just escaped me. So whatever. Why take the fight? Yeah, why? You didn't need to take the fight. We all wanted to see the Paulo Costa fight anyway. Now, when this got booked, I mean, listen, I got pretty excited. I'm not gonna use Fred language here, but I got pretty excited. So. I'm glad that it got booked in that sense, and I was ready, and I think the rest of the community was ready. But from Adesanya's standpoint, you didn't need to take the fight. It was a huge risk, and if this was the way that you were going to go about the fight, if this was your game plan, then why take it? I mean, he sounded like he knew that this is exactly what was going to happen. Well, shit. If you knew that, then save us all some trouble. Don't book the fight and wait for the guy you're actually supposed to fight to get healthy. Right? Am I crazy?
I don't think I think he expected it to be like a weird sort of chess match. I don't think he expected Yoel Romero to literally glue his feet to the octagon and just move his shoulders around. He didn't move for 2 minutes. How could you ever expect? And Adesanya is moving around, okay, we're gonna be in a fight, and you could see him just kind of awkwardly slow down a little bit. What am I supposed to do right now? And Romero just stood there and, didn't move his feet at all. It was crazy. It was just it was hilarious, actually. I was laughing as I'm typing this out. I'm I cannot believe what I'm watching right now, especially after that last fight. And the tweet I put out right before that main event, I was like, this is going to be Chris Jericho versus Triple H following Hulk Hogan versus The Rock at WrestleMania. Perfect. And boy, it went from, it was like Hogan Rock leading into a disqualification in a Hell in a Cell match. That's the comparison. Honestly, because Jericho Triple H is a good match if you go back and watch it. It just followed something crazy. This, you can use the excuse all you want, how you're supposed to follow what those two ladies just did, but that's your follow-up. And I get it. Adesanya is the champion. It's not going to be like that all the time, but he needs to bounce back. I thought Michael Bisping, when he talked to James Lynch, said it best. Listen, it was a boring fight. Adesanya needs to be on his A game for the next fight. We have very short memories in the sport because Adesanya just had the freaking fight of the year last year, and then he had one of the best knockouts of the year too. Yeah,
all you have to do is just get back in the winning column, and there is it's a good point, and I assume that's what we're transitioning into now. But it's a good point. We're going from the Joanna Wele fight where the dichotomy between these two fights is part of what's creating, I think, the narrative. The Adesanya Romero fight in a vacuum is terrible, but if that was on a normal card, I think the card would have just been terrible, and that would have been the narrative. I think they would have gotten a lot of crap, but it wouldn't have been nearly as bad. The fact that it was following that just the juxtaposition between those two things is so absurd that it's hard to not obsess over how bad it was. And I think in comparison, again, it's not like the Joanna Wele fight wasn't getting accolades once it was finished. But again, to have that fight follow it was kind of a perfect storm, because now that fight is going to get overinflated as well, because everybody is just, again, they're creating a false dichotomy between these two fights. Whether they're doing it on purpose or not, that's what they're doing. They're creating a thing where it's like this or this, and they're just overinflating this thing because they're not really comparing it to the rest of the fights. They're just comparing it to this one right here, and like, oh my God, look how much better this was. It was 99% better on a scale of 100. So therefore, it's like the greatest fight to ever happen. And I have a hard time even knowing if that's even true or not, because I'm doing the same thing that everybody else is doing, which is that. It's the fight that follows it just makes that fight that much crazier.
So what you're saying, Kyle, and then we'll go to you, Drake, is if Adesanya did what most people kind of expect him to do, just sort of pick Romero apart, win a unanimous decision, 4-1, a normal fight, like he avoided danger at times. Like, do you think if that happened the way we sort of expected it to? Because I don't think many people expected these two to just stand in a phone booth and beat the hell out of each other like we saw with Zhang Weili and Ioane and Jacek. But if the main event went the way we sort of envisioned it happening, are you saying that people may not view the co-main event as highly as maybe they're looking at it now, or is it just, maybe some of those percentage points are a result of that main event just being so terrible?
Yeah, I do think, and this isn't, I don't think I'm inventing something here. This is just kind of typical psychology. Your reaction to things tends to be, if I play you a song that is kind of humdrum, and then I play you my favorite song that I think will also be your favorite song, just simply because it followed a run-of-the-mill humdrum song, it is going to conflate it. It's how that it's human psychology. It's something you do in sales. I don't do it, of course, because I'm so ethical and above board, and I just convince people with my charm and wit.
You look for the no, Kyle. You look for the no.
I do. It's true. It's I give a lot of good advice, so you all better be taking notes. But where you the way you order your showings, if you think that someone's really going to like a house, you will show them something first that you think they're kind of going to hate. So that way, when you follow it up with a thing that they're going to love, they get that much more attached to it, because their brain, again, creates this false dichotomy, this versus that, as opposed to that versus the entire market. They start going, look how much better this is than the one we just saw. Therefore, this is the one for us, right? So, and that's just houses. There's tons of sales techniques that kind of are centered around this concept. So, again, it was an incredible fight. I'm not saying that it wasn't. I haven't even really analyzed where I would place this on like this greatest fight ever scale, at least not really. I did immediately, but again, I was kind of suffering from the same thing I'm talking about. But I just think if the fight, if the Adesanya, and I'm talking a lot, I'm so sorry. If the Adesanya Romero fight is a normal fight, I do not think the Weili Joanna fight is getting the type of accolades it's getting right now. I really don't.
Drake, what do you think about that? Because I'm a giddy guy. I was giddy when that fight was over. I did literally 25 push-ups, like as fast as I could, because I was so jacked.
It was fantastic.
Like, oh my God, we still have this main event. We still have the main event. And then I did no push-ups after the main event. But
Went right to
do you agree with Kyle? Do you feel that way, or did you feel a certain kind of way about that co-main event once it was over?
It's impossible not to compare just like everything in everyday life, really. So, in that regard, yeah, I think there is some of that going on, but I think that this fight was good enough to where it is standing out, just for being good by itself. And I mean, think about this, man. I never ever expected Adesanya versus Romero to be better than this fight. I think you can agree with me. You were very excited for it as well. A lot of people were. Dana White was. I mean, the boss was more excited for that fight than the main event. I mean, competitive wise, on paper, everything pointed to this fight being better than the other one. And there goes Kyle. So I mean,
did you mean to do that? Sorry, TDs, some TDs. Go ahead.
So I mean, I mean, met expectations or went above expectations, but it was always expected to be good and better, in my opinion. So I don't know. I think that that helps. Having to compare it to something. So we're up here, and then it goes to as low as it can be. The highest of highs, the lowest of lows. Yeah, I was dude. Every single exchange, I was freaking out pretty much that whole time. It was one of those things where it's like, God, they are just going for it every time. I think it stands alone without the comparison, but of course, there's a little bit of that. There's always that with every fight. I mean, just comparing things in general. That's what we do. It's hard not to, right? So a little bit, but I think not as much as Kyle.
Since Kyle has been speaking so much, I'll go to him in a moment. But how did you score that co-main event? Did you score it for Zhang Weili or did you score it for Ioana and Jacek?
Yes, I had it. I think it was, they were so close, so I'm trying to remember exactly. I had it round 1 Weili, and then 4 and 5. I think that was it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was it. They were all very close. Maybe not. Maybe it was 1-2-5. Because in the second round, I remember there was that moment where Weili, she had Ioana the most hurt, I think, in the whole fight. There was a moment where she backed up and was like on her bike, and I was like, oh, what? You go for it right now. This is the moment, like close the gap. But played it smart probably by not doing that. Who knows? But yeah, maybe it was 1-2-5 Weili. Either way, 3 rounds to the 2 48-47 for Weili. Very close, very competitive. Not a robbery. I tweeted that out afterwards. I saw people saying robbery in that fight, that Ioana was robbed. That is the absolute pinnacle of MMA fan stupidity if I've ever seen it, man. Are you kidding me? You're calling that fight? It's like the definition has changed into a close fight now. Like, I don't know. Yeah. It drives me insane.
We got some questions here. John Franklin, the question is, how would you maybe view a rewatch?
I was like, I do have an answer for that real quick. I do have an answer for this. Your forehead does not get to look like that at the end of the fight, and you get a W. So again, the scoring is irrelevant. It doesn't matter what the rest of the rounds were. If you get to the end of the fight and that's what you look like, you lose. It is what it is. It is what it is. Like it just, I'm sorry, you get the W. You won 4 of the 5 rounds, but what are we gonna do? Our hands are tied. If we got it, the other person gets the belt.
So no matter what, even if Ioana won 4 rounds, we're still giving the belt away just Zhang Weili because of the hematoma.
Yeah, obviously that's not true. But listen, that was wild.
How did you score it?
I don't remember. I imagine the same as Drake because I think that's what the kind of general consensus was as well. I believe it was 1, 4, and 5, if I remember correctly. She lost the kind of middle rounds there, and then Weili, got it back going at the end. But I mean, it wasn't even all that close of a fight necessarily. I mean, from what I remember, it just seemed like it was a good fight, but it wasn't like, I don't know, it wasn't all that close. I think it was a pretty clear kind of winner and loser there, at least in my mind. And again, to just kind of wrap up what I was saying about the conflating the two and that kind of stuff, like the fight is still amazing on its own and in that vacuum, and I'm not saying that, but it's being heralded as like the greatest ever, and I think that's because we're contrasting it to the fight after. So that's what my point was, just to make sure that's understood.
I understand. I actually scored it for Ioana, but again, like Drake said, no robbery. If you call that fight a robbery, you were an idiot. I'm sorry, but I gave 1 and 5 to Zhang Weili. I gave 2, 3, and 4 to Ioana. I mean, they were super close rounds, and they could have gone either way. So I ain't mad at you however you scored it. But those are the kind of fights we want.
Easy, man. So everything was just like, yeah. No, those are the fights we want. It's like when we were talking about it. I don't remember when that was, but yeah, man, that's what you want. And as MMA continues to evolve, this is what we need more of, and we'll get. So
certainly in the women's divisions. I mean, good Lord. I mean, it's just like this just propelled that division and that class, leaps ahead.
JHK, Wiley. How do you really pronounce it?
it's Wiley.
Adesanya. God.
It's
she's
speaking
champ. I'm calling her the champ because that and to hear her say like, I didn't even think that performance was good. Like if that wasn't a good performance, holy shit.
I get it though, because she wants to go out there and win more decisively. But yeah, that's a championship mindset right there.
According to Kyle with the hematoma, I mean that's it. Like, she automatically won. As soon as the hematoma popped up, you should have waved it off.
But wave it off after the fight's over. End the fight, and it's like, all right, wave it off. Really,
stop the damn match.
He's already dead.
He's already dead. All right, so Kyle kind of talked about it. Drake, I want to get your take on it, and maybe I'm going to add a little pillar to this because I asked a question on Twitter on Sunday. I said, was this the weekend where women's MMA took a jump up a level? And what I meant by that was maybe not the skill set, because I feel like we've seen some really good quality women's MMA fights over the year. Some people have seen and some people are very aware of. Others may not be aware of. But I think in the casual eye and for MMA in general, for the audience that these organizations are trying to attract overall, I think this was a huge weekend for women's MMA between the Invicta main event and between that Joanna Zhang Weili fight. I mean, women's MMA was the buzz of the sport on Sunday. No doubt about that. So with that being said, how did you sort of react to seeing that question and kind of hearing the way I actually meant to present it? Do you feel any differently about it?
I'm really glad that you mentioned the Invicta, fight, because I wanted to bring that up too. And yeah, when you break it down more that way, because I responded to that tweet and I was like, oh, come on, Mike, it's kind of in there already. But if you're paying attention, people like to hate on the ladies and all that. But yeah, no, I think it was really kind of massive for kind of changing maybe more of the casual perception of, oh man, chick fights, because I mean, holy shit, we're talking all about Wiley and Joanna, and rightfully so. But if you missed Lisa Versosa versus Yulia Stoliarenko, go watch that fight right after this podcast, because that might have been the bloodiest fight I've ever seen. It doesn't matter, women only. I mean, that was insane. That was Rory McDonald, Robbie Lawler Part 2. Robbie Lawler versus Rory McDonald 2 Part 2, the sequel. Dude, that fight was so amazing. That was a fight of the year contender as well, regardless of gender, that kind of thing. I mean, they went out and performed, man. It was such a good weekend. If you just look at those two fights, like the Invicta card, the tournament, I thought it was, it was all right. It wasn't too crazy. I was, entertained and enjoyed the whole show. But man, once we got to that main event, it was like, this is the main event. Like, you could feel it after the first round. First round was nuts. One of the best rounds of the year. I know it's still early and all that, but the fight has kept going at the same pace. Two phenomenal fights. And yeah, I think that it was really big. Just having all the elements of kind of chaos and violence that these fights provided. I mean, maybe it'll turn people away because they like the other thing also was like, oh, I don't like to see women get beat up or whatever. I get it. No, I totally understand that opinion or whatever. Maybe it's, think what you will about it. But man, it just goes to show that they can hang in there still as compared to the guys. And that the level is increasing. And if you haven't been paying attention, you're going to see it now. As little as attention that you're paying, it'll be more out there for you to see, I guess is what I'm getting at. But yeah, I think that when you break it down, Mike, that's a good point.
And the Invicta fight got even better because the best ring announcer in sport in MMA, Joe Martinez, got me all fired up. Get on your feet. Are you ready? I was ready. That's all I needed to hear, Joe. You're the man. No, I'm just kidding. He is great though. Yeah, great weekend for women's MMA. Kyle, this is probably like asking John Franklin if you watched that Invicta fight, but did you watch that Invicta card on Friday?
I did not watch the card, but I did because of all the press it was getting. I went back and I watched. I just skipped ahead. I think I started to play the whole card and I was doing something on my computer. I'm like, I actually want to watch the fight. So if I just do this, I'm going to miss it. So I just went ahead and went to the end and just watched it. And holy Lord. I mean, that is wild. And like, I knew that I obviously just from the press it was getting, I knew all the blood, but I did not realize it was that. I guess it makes sense, but like that pace is just, I mean, good Lord. But anyway, two incredible fights. Absolutely. So I do think that this was a big step ahead. And I think, honest to God, that one of the reasons why it was a big step ahead is when someone like Islam Makhachev is coming on and making the statement that he made. That to me, that's a good thing, because it means that is how far they got this weekend. That it drove someone like that out of the woodwork and pushed them into a position where they felt like they had to say something. Had the women not progressed enough and had they not made the splash they made, that wouldn't have happened. So I think the kind of proof is in the pudding with that. The other thing is, I think you guys, not you guys, the proverbial you, I think we will be shocked at the buy rate on this card. I think we're going to be really, really surprised by the amount of people who watch this card. I think Adesanya really does have a crossover appeal. You know, I think he has ventured into that land. Again, I saw people posting about him on my Facebook. It's obviously not like when Connor's fighting, but I saw people posting about that fight before it happened. Listen, it was pretty much crickets after, but you know, I saw people posting about that fight before it happened that I've never seen or didn't know they watched UFC. I had no idea, you know, so I think we're going to be surprised at the buy rate on that, or again, just like the amount of extra places that bought it, you know, extra bars and stuff that maybe don't usually buy the pay-per-views, but went ahead and bought this one, you know, and they'll buy the Connor card, or in Ohio, they'll buy when Stipe's on or something, you know. I think he might have gotten added to that list. So I think there's a lot more eyes on it. So yeah, I mean, I think there's absolutely, especially for the UFC. Obviously, Invicta is a whole another can of worms, but
right.
For the UFC, I think this was a big step up, and it's proof that when you have a lot of boring fights in those divisions, it's not the weight class, it's not the division, it's just like we're gonna have to keep increasing the talent level, and it's going to be slow, but it's going to happen. You know, all these things that are being shared right now about Cindy, when they were saying, I forgot who posted it, but they said something like, everybody here talking about the Willa Joanna fight being the best ever clearly forgot that Alexa Davis fought Cindy Dandios. And we're seeing obviously the clips from that. And it's like, that happened in the UFC, under the UFC banner, like not that long ago. That was like 2 years ago. Like it wasn't that long ago. So, you know, we have to keep increasing, you know, and I think it's going to keep getting better.
I want to actually ask both of you guys one question real quick.
Sure.
Does Versosa versus Stoliarenko get stopped if the fight's in New York?
God, yeah.
Yeah.
1000%.
Oh man. Those cuts, dude. I mean, I was surprised they didn't stop it as is. I mean, that thing was, jeez. I mean, they almost connected. That's how bad that
it was. Like the Missouri River map on her head. Like it was crazy. It was crazy. She looked like the Chucky doll and like Bride of Chucky. What a crazy fight, man. I mean, what both of those fights are absolutely crazy, but
it's so weird too, just to go on a tiny quick tangent, you know, because I talked to her, I went to her gym and talked to her before that fight the week before. Man, just one of the, you know, a very shy, soft-spoken person, you know, like we think of like Hannah Cyphers or who's the one person you were telling me about, Jonathan Martinez, you know, the quiet fighters, but lived up to her nickname, Battle Angel, man. You know, like Jesus, you would never guess. Like,
outstanding.
Insane.
And I think that's going to help Invicta down the road too, because I've been singing Invicta's praises forever. Like they never ever put on a bad card. It just never happens. Like I never walk out of Invicta and be like, shit, I really wish I didn't watch that card. Never has happened. They're all good. I mean, Phoenix series is a little bit tough because, you know, you have to have different strategies. You have to approach fights different ways. Who's that? Why can't I think of her? Hope Chase. Woo. That girl's scary, man. She's intense. She's intense. But I was hoping she'd win it because I'd be like, there's just something about her. She kind of freaked me out. But
and what
fun to
about
watch.
the open scoring though? Is that the topic we jump on?
We can talk about that. I thought it was I mean, it is what it is. It was cool. It was cool to like see how it worked and seeing some coaches use it, other coaches didn't use it. Like it was interesting to see it in that way. There was no real drama here at all. Like nothing really surprised me in terms of the scoring. The main event, I think one of the scorecards was a little weird.
Yeah,
but
there was one of the judges who gave, you could see as it was happening, right? They gave Stolyarenko a 10-8 in round 3 when I was like, I think, round 1 was maybe closer to a 10-8 than that one, which was a little weird. And the thing I noticed, I liked it. I was all for that. It was really cool and everything. But it takes away the anticipation of getting, the scorecard being read, because that's kind of a thing that you look forward to. And in a fight like that, you would have no idea what the scores are, what they're going to be coming from the judges. Like we'd have our ideas, and I had it Stolyarenko 48-47. I don't remember which rounds necessarily, but yeah, I think the right person won for sure. But you would never know, especially in those commissions. As I love to flam them a bit.
I mean, what was interesting about Friday, before we get to Hot Take Kyle, is so many people tweeted out on Saturday night, like, imagine if Yoel Romero and Israel Adesanya was an open scoring fight heading into that 5th round. Imagine if they both knew where they stood. Would that have changed anything? And clearly it would have. Is that did I steal your hot take away, Kyle Steele? Son of a bitch. Continue. You piggyback on top of it.
Well, listen. So there's a quote by Kurt Vonnegut. He talks about short story writing, and he says, "To heck with suspense. Give your reader so much information as soon as possible that if cockroaches were to eat the last few pages, the reader could finish the story themselves." And he wrote a book called Mother Night, which is probably my favorite book of all time. I have a couple Vonnegut tattoos. A big Vonnegut fan, but Mother Night is one of my favorite books of all time. You should read it. He tells you as the book's progressing, there's a lot of kind of mystery in it, but he tells you as it's happening exactly what the character is going to find out later. He will literally just tell you, well, this guy was actually this guy. And then the character in the novel will then have that happen to him. You already know, of course, from 100 pages earlier. And when the character finds out, you're honestly more surprised then than you were when he told you in the first place. Like, there's a way to create suspense in storytelling. There's a way to create suspense where you don't leave people in the dark. It's why the movie Premonition doesn't work, even though technically it was harder to follow than Knives Out, right? Like, technically it's more mysterious than Knives Out, but Knives Out is such a better movie because it's just better storytelling. They give you a lot of information up front, so you're not lost as you're watching it. Anyway, all that to say, the suspense, to me, the open scoring is the exact opposite of what it's being pailed as, which is taking away suspense. To me, it's going to add an immense amount of more suspense, because when you get to the end, you know where you stand. And most of these people, they're not fighting to make it out of there unscathed, right? Most fighters, that's not what their goal is. So if they legitimately know that they're losing, I think a lot of times they don't think that they are, and nobody wants to get punched in the face. Nobody wants to get in a position where they're going to get choked out. So they may even force a narrative into their brain, which is, you know what, I'm probably winning. So just go ahead and play it safe. Let's not get hurt. Let's not take unnecessary damage, right? But if you knew and straight up knew, like it's the literal actual scorecards, not someone's opinion, if you legitimately actually knew, well, here we go, buddy. Like, it's do or die now. So you're creating, I think, more suspense in that you as the viewer, you know what is on the line here. And the fighter knows what's on the line. And it's almost going to be that much more frustrating when they don't let loose. You're like, dude, you know that you're losing. Like, let loose. Like, you can see the scorecard. Like, we all can, So I think to me, if they were to do this more often, and if this were to become a legitimate thing, there's not enough of a test of a field here. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but there's not enough of a field sample size. To know what we're looking at. So this needs to happen quite a bit more, and then we'll go from there. But
Sure.
I think what's ultimately going to happen is you're going to create more suspense, not less. And I can understand why people think, I'm not even really disagreeing per se. I can understand knowing the results of a fight before you have the results seemingly takes away a lot of suspense. I just think on a long enough timeline, that's not how it's going to happen. I think as it happens more, you're going to find that it's so much more intriguing when you and everybody else knows what needs to happen in that third round in a close fight, or a fifth round in a close fight. I think it's going to add a level of suspense that we haven't had before, and you're going to love it.
That's great. You kind of flipped me there. I feel really excited now. I'm sure they'll do that for that.
I can't do that very often, so I'm glad I was able to get that one in.
There's the hot take shades, man. You got them going.
That's
you built that suspense and hot take Kyle. So I can't believe if you told me that it was going to take 41 minutes in this podcast to start talking about the big news of the day, I would probably laugh at you and said, no, it would have started 20 minutes before this. But that's how great Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Zhang Wei Li, and just women's MMA did over the weekend. But crazy. I mean, coronavirus is everywhere. We've been, yeah, that's right. Off the cuff, bros. So we've been seeing reports pretty much all day long on all different sports between Major League Baseball, NCAA basketball, NBA, Warriors playing in an empty arena indefinitely now, NCAA tournament, empty arenas through the entire tournament, all sorts of craziness at this point. And now it looks like MMA, we've seen some of the like KSW and some other events have been canceled or moved. And now the UFC is dealing with something. Guilherme Cruz of MMA Fighting wrote, and I quote, with 2 confirmed cases of the novel coronavirus in the capital of Brazil, Governor Ibanez Roca announced on Wednesday night that sporting events and concerts with gatherings of a large number of people will be suspended until March 16th. Schools will also be closed, he announced. Currently, UFC Fight Night event is scheduled to go down Saturday night at the 16,000-seat Nelson Gymnasium. Kevin Lee headlines the card against Charles Oliveira. Multiple UFC officials who asked not to be named because they're not authorized to speak publicly told MMA Fighting they're aware of the decision, but not yet sure how it will affect the fight card. UFC officials currently are in talks with the government to understand how this decision impacts the event. Sources said there are 52 confirmed cases of the novel coronavirus in Brazil, only 2 of those in Brasilia. So, Drake, we'll start with you here. Your thoughts on all of this, because as you've seen on Twitter, there's 2 camps here. One is, what's the big deal? Here's the influenza virus and how many people died in the US. Like, you're all making a big deal out of this. And on the other end, it's like, why risk it? Let's just cancel everything, or let's empty the arenas. Let's still do this, but let the fighters compete, but let's keep the fans safe. Like, what side of the fence are you on? Do you think it's an overreaction and underreaction? Because, I mean, this is new territory for me, man.
Yeah, it's a really, kind of bizarre thing. We've lived through, some viruses and outbreaks and things like that before, but this one feels like it's really, kind of out there and being more talked about a bit. I look back at what there was like the swine flu when I was in like middle school or whatever back in the day. Some other ones too, but yeah, with this, it's weird. I don't know, because I have a family member who is very, their work is very immediately directed by this, working with a lot of stuff in Asia and moving parts that cannot be moved now because of all of this. And so it's hearing like kind of the inside stuff in the business kind of world and how it's affecting that too is really interesting. But at the same time, it's like, it's hard to think of like something like that being so real, and so widespread. So it's like, man, I don't know. It's just a kind of a lot to process for me. And imagining that kind of thing being just, it's hard to imagine being real, is I guess what I'm saying. I don't know. So yeah. But as for like the events and everything, it's better safe to be than sorry. I didn't know actually about the Brasilia issue. I knew that Columbus is having the issue now with, Ohio. We touched on that a little bit early and, before going on. And then, just I think it was the other day, Washington State, where I live, they put the gathering ban down too for like events of 250 plus or whatever. So that UFC Seattle card that is yet to be announced, most likely not happening now, or going to be, very small, closed or whatever, like one did and all that. So I don't know, man. I can't give like a really good answer on how I feel about it because I'm very it's a lot for me to process personally. So yeah, I don't know, man. It's crazy.
All right, yeah, this is kind of a loaded question here, clearly. So Kyle, let's think about it in this sense because, better be safe than sorry. I'm kind of with that. I mean, no, I know Bellator's coming up on Friday, UFC's on Saturday, and so forth and so forth and so on. But the big worry here amongst MMA fans clearly is on April 18th with Khabib and Tony Ferguson. Everyone's like, oh my God, this fight might get canceled. Holy shit, what are we going to do with ourselves? And then there's other people that are like, listen, if they do this fight in an empty arena, like it's bullshit. You need to reschedule it for another time. Like the atmosphere is just as important as the fight itself. Like I actually read this on Twitter that the atmosphere and having people in the arena is more important than those two guys actually getting into a cage and fighting. And for those who have followed my work for years, I couldn't disagree. I disagree with that so much. I've been advocating that those two they shouldn't even announce them fighting. They should just book it like the day before. Yeah. UFC is live on YouTube. What is this? Why is Khabib weighing in right now? Oh, why is Tony Ferguson weighing in right now? They're gonna fight tomorrow at the Ultimate Fighter gym. Fuck yeah, $9.99. Let's do it. Like I've been advocating for that forever. Now, like we're gonna see something similar. I don't give a shit. But do you agree with that, Kyle? Like, do you feel like we have to have 18,000 people in the Barclays Center to watch Khabib and Tony, or do you think the fight itself is fine?
So that's an interesting take. Because I agree with both of those takes. I don't agree with the totality of the first guy, but I agree. I agree with the totality of what you said, though. I think if you set it up that way, then absolutely. But you couldn't have it in the venue that it's going to be where there's just a bunch of echo, and I think that would be very weird, and I don't think it would play over very well. So Keith and I did MMA yesterday for quite some time. We'll pick it back up at some point, but the fights ain't going anywhere. I'm not that worried about it. But when you watch the cards where they went to Japan, and the crowd was just dead silent because that's how they did it, right? It's weird, and there are actually people there, and sometimes you can hear them. It is very odd just to hear echoes. Like even when you're watching the early prelims, a lot of times, like the Fight Pass prelims, I guess now it's almost all on ESPN Plus, but back when you used to watch the Fight Pass prelims on like a Sunday afternoon card, and it's like no one's in the arena at 12 Eastern or whatever it is, and it's weird. It has a weird atmosphere. Now imagine that atmosphere in a big arena like that, or in a big facility like that, and now it's Khabib Tony. That would just be bizarre. So if you're gonna do that, then yeah, just move the fight. But if you were to do it in like the UFC gym, like not UFC gym, but do it at the Performance Center, or to do it at the Ultimate Fighter gym or whatever it is, well then yeah, you could make that work, because you wouldn't be just surrounded, like the cameras are closer, like the space is closer. It's like, yeah, you could totally do that. I want to address the first part of it, because I haven't necessarily seen the greatest like dialogue on this stuff. So like, I want to make a point that I guess I just haven't really seen it. I want to make a point. For people who are talking about the coronavirus and comparing it to the flu and all that kind of stuff, the other main point that's being discussed is if you are of a healthy person over the age of 10 and under the age of 70 or whatever it is, you're going to be perfectly fine if you get it, right? That's a big narrative. Do we cuss on this? We allowed to cuss?
We've been cussing. This is barbershop talk. So,
so I can drop an F-bomb.
It's your network. You can do whatever the hell you want.
That's true. That's true. You like how passive I am? I'm like, is that okay with you, Mike? Drake?
You can find yourself, Kyle.
I can do whatever I want. So I think if you're someone, and this might be you guys, and if that is, then whatever. But if that's an argument that you're making publicly, you're a fucking moron. Like, how wildly self-consumed could you possibly be to not understand that the reason for the bans has nothing to do with you, 31-year-old Kyle. It has to do with your children who are 5, 3, and 9 months. If I get the coronavirus, I'm going to be okay. If I then pass that off to my mother who has a bunch of health problems and to my children, there's a high probability they're going to die. That is why you have quarantines. That's why you have these issues. It's not because it's any more quote unquote life-threatening than getting the flu, but percentage-wise, this seems to be far more deadly. The only reason why you're not having flu-like deaths is because it hasn't gotten to that many people yet. Everybody in the entire fucking world is exposed to the normal flu, so those are the rates you get on a normal flu. Now look at the rates you're getting from this; they are unreal. And this thing, as Mike was talking about, you had a meeting with a couple hundred people, and fucking half of them got the sickness. I mean, this is that is not how the flu works. The normal flu does not spread like that, or if it does, it isn't spreading to this like nth degree, like in as serious, even just for normal people. But that's the thing. If you're one of those people that keeps posting about how if you're under a certain age or over a certain age, that's when you're affected. Like, this isn't that big of a deal. It doesn't affect the vast majority of people. You're like, either you're really fucking dumb or you're really selfish. And I don't know which one, but it's not there to protect you. It's there to protect the people who are outside of those ranges that you just addressed exist. And we don't want it to get to them. So you got to put a fucking stopgap to keep it from getting there. So yeah, I'm super. If UFC Columbus gets banned, though, I might take a whole different approach and be real petty and angry that this is happening, and be like, "Dude, it's like no one there is going to be affected by it. Like, there's no 10-year-old here. Who cares?" Because I have box seats. I got box seats to UFC Columbus. Like, come on, let this happen.
Something just came out.
If UFC Columbus is canceled, don't tell me because I'll just leave.
No.
Fight news.
Something. It's not fight news. It's Hold on one second. I'm sorry. It has to do with sports and the coronavirus. I'll tell you that.
Okay, interesting.
ESPN the one thing I hate about the ESPN app is they will send you a notification, and then when you click on the notification, there's nothing there. It just sends you to the fucking website. It drives you crazy.
They don't have the story up yet.
So basically, with the let me go. So basically, it said that the NBA is going to like suspend all games until they figure out their next move. But I'm trying to actually find the article and actually read this.
I think this is what, and this is a good point. It's like, again, I know we're venturing outside of the MMA stuff, but it's like, if that isn't evidence enough, because again, people think that there's an overreaction, and I can understand that. I understand why people think there's an overreaction, but do you think that multi-billion-dollar organizations make million-dollar loss decisions at the whim of you know what I mean? Like, there's a reason that they're doing this. They're not like, they're not just doing it because it's like, oh, we're in hysterics. No, like, there's a reason they're doing this. These are multi-billion-dollar organizations who are going, yeah, this shit is serious. You know, they like, before they did this, they consulted, I guarantee you, umpteen people. Like, this wasn't just some guy who was like, cancel the tournament. No, like, they sat down or had meetings or read briefings with scientists and doctors and professors and whoever else and learned the ins and outs, and were like, yeah, this is a big fucking deal. This is going to cost us an immense amount of money and hurt tourism in the areas that they're going to be, but we got to do what we got to do, and we're going to cancel it.
Have you ever been on Twitter and just watch a tweet just absolutely explode before your eyes?
Yeah.
I'm watching it right now. Adrian Wojnarowski. He tweeted 6 words. The NBA has suspended the season. It's already got 60,000 retweets in 7 minutes.
Listen,
7 minutes.
Listen, I'm not one to brag, but I did get quite a few tweets. I got retweeted by Bisping, and I've just been walking around today. I wouldn't let my wife touch me. She couldn't talk to me, couldn't touch me. I made her call me king.
Hot take shades.
Yeah, you know what I mean. I've just been walking around like this all day. It's I got that Bisping bump.
It's got 63,000 retweets. So Wojnarowski, NBA suspended the season, and then he said the NBA will, quote, use the hiatus to determine next steps moving forward. The Jazz and Thunder players are currently quarantined in the OKC arena. This is following Rudy Gobert's testing positive for the coronavirus.
Holy
damn,
shit.
Dude. Honestly, and maybe this is the unpopular opinion, but fucking cancel all this shit. Like, do it at the arenas. Like, if the press wants to go and cover events, like, that's great. Like, Mohegan, Bellator 241, if there's one event out of maybe any of these events that should probably get called, it's probably that one, because you have a smoky, nasty casino with all these people in there, some of which are probably affected by it, and then you're going to cram everybody into the Mohegan Sun Arena. I mean, that's a lot of exposure there. I'm still going to go and cover it.
I just have a real quick question. Did I just hear a home phone?
I heard a home phone.
Maybe.
Do you have a home phone?
What about it?
That's phenomenal. That is. This is how the coronavirus gets spread. This is it right here.
Oh no!
Landlines?
Drake Riggs with his landline.
God damn it, guys! Busted. My state is on lockdown.
So I mean, it's crazy. I didn't think we would I didn't think 2020 would be starting off like this. Really, it's kind of weird. Like I don't even know what to think about. Like, is it going to be? Are we going to deal with this for like a month? 3 months, 6 months longer? Like, I don't know. That's what's so weird about all this. Like, do we just do empty arena events? Like, I don't know.
Might as well, right? I mean,
I don't care if they do Habib and Tony in a warehouse parking lot. I'm watching it.
Just might be more entertaining that way.
Just make the damn thing happen.
My money. I'll give you every dime. Do it in a Walmart. I don't care.
Go to
anywhere.
Richard Brunson's island.
Sure. That works too. Club La Vila, where they used to have WCW Monday Nitro. Like, let's do that.
Bash at the beach.
Yeah, bash at the beach. Yeah, so all this is happening right now, and nobody really knows what to do. But I think it's important to err on the side of caution at this point for all the reasons Kyle talked about.
Yeah,
it's not about you. It's not about you. It's not about the athletes. It's about affecting the people in your lives. I mean, full disclosure, I'm scheduled to go visit my parents in Florida next week with my son and my wife. I'm supposed to go down there and see him, but we're hesitant right now. Like, what if one of us has and we don't know it? We go to Florida. My parents are not the youngest people in the world. So we'd feel like terrible if we left and then like a week later they got coronavirus.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is it's a very bizarre, like, I don't know. When this first started happening, like, again, to be serious, like when this first started happening, I was like, whatever. Like, how many of these have and I'm 30, and how many of these have I lived through? You know, the SARS and the bird flu and the swine flu and the H1N1 and the MERS. And, you know what I mean? I feel like I've lived through all this, and I just like, whatever. But like, I don't remember this. I mean, I don't remember it ever being like this. This has been ratcheted up to a new level, and this thing appears to be a wildly contagious disease here. I mean, they were saying that I saw a stat, you know, how bad the bubonic plague is. That it was something like 130 times more communicable than the bubonic plague. I mean, that's it is because bubonic plague, you got to really touch saliva. You know, like you have to have a little bit, there's a little bit of a next level, you know, where with this, it's like, dude, it's just literally touching someone's hand. You know, it's that simple. And again, with the normal flu, I can touch your hand, I can give you a hug, whatever. And I haven't had the flu in forever. And I've been around tons of people who have had it, and I haven't gotten it. So, you know, it's whatever. But this corona thing, it just seems like anyone that comes in contact, you get it. And again, most people who are getting it are recovering. The mass majority of people who are getting the coronavirus are recovering, and they're perfectly fine. But again, those are the healthy people. But just because you're a healthy, vivacious young person, it doesn't mean you're not then spreading it to everybody else around you. And like with how communicable this is, like that's a really big deal.
Yeah, and so I remember swine being out of control. Swine was nuts. The numbers on that is insane, but I think I'm looking at it, and you as well, Kyle, are looking at these things a little bit differently because now we have kids, and you know, it's not about ourselves and just like our significant others. We have to worry about the little ones.
When was swine flu? Was that like
2011?
8, 9.
Yeah.
8, 9, yeah.
So I don't remember exactly when it was, but it was prior to, I mean, my daughter was born in 2015. I got married in 2013.
Yeah.
It was prior to all that stuff. So it's like, dude, back then I didn't give a shit. You could have told me the next door neighbor had swine flu. I'd be like, I don't give a fuck. Like, it wasn't even a thing. Like, whatever, I'll be all right.
I remember being in 8th grade in middle school, and whooping cough was like the wildly spread thing, and I fucking got it, which sucked. It was so bad. I was sick for like a month. It was like the worst I've ever felt in my whole life. But I remember that happening. And people were dying and going through a lot of the same things. I think this is way crazier than that, but I remember it seems like every 5, 6, 7 years we get something like this, and we get to deal with it and try to jump on it real quick. And rather than have people fight and debate about it, let's just do what we can to make everybody safe. Like I just wish like everyone would just stay in their house for 2 weeks. Like nobody go out at all. Like buy all your shit. Like just go out there and be like, you have 24 hours to go out there and like buy what you need. And then we're just going to put you in your house for 2 weeks. And if you leave your house, you're going to jail. Like, I don't know. Like
right.
That'll fix it.
That's like, I mean, I don't know what China started doing a little bit.
Yeah.
Similar.
That's why I'm not the president or any kind of political officer at this point. So, all right, we got a few minutes. We've really just been yapping away here. I just want to get your take on a couple of things before we get out of here. Some news did drop. Drake, your thoughts on the UFC Dublin main event that's being targeted between Robert Whittaker and Darren Till?
Not mad at it. You know, I kind of like what's going on with Cannonier. That's the only thing I think about with that one, because, you know, he was slotted kind of, you know, potentially against both of them, more so Till. Did he had an injury now or something? Is that what it is? Okay, so yeah, in that case, if he can't fight, then I'm totally fine with this one. I'm happy with it being a main event rather than not a main event. You know, give that fight 5 rounds. That deserves 5 rounds. I'm all for that. For Dublin, I mean, I guess Till, one of the biggest European stars right now, so fits right in there. And then Whittaker, you know, former champion. I'm totally happy with it. I think that's a great fight, especially with the 5 rounds. I think that's the big key for me. I'm happy that it's not 3 rounds.
And Kyle, to give it to you, you can give your quick thoughts on the fight, but your thoughts on the UFC announcing a main event 5+ months away.
Yeah, it seems to be good luck. Yeah, good luck getting there. You know, I'm also interested in why hasn't even remotely been discussed having a Conor fight in Dublin inside of a legitimate space like a soccer arena or something along those lines. I know there's something in Dublin that could be big enough to hold to handle a Conor fight, and I just feel like that would be such a cool thing to have happen. I mean, imagine the crowd during that fight. I mean, it'd almost be hard to watch the fight. It would be so deafening. You know, I'm so interested why the UFC would go back to Dublin, and I don't know. I feel like it would make so much sense to have that happen. But I mean, what do I know? Again, I talked about this earlier. They're a multi-billion-dollar organization. Like, they know what they're doing. You know, like, I'm who the fuck am I? But interested in why they announced it so soon. That seems a little goofy. There's no need to. First of all, it's not like you're gonna like, oh, thanks for letting us know now because we're gonna build all this suspense. The fight is what it is. It's a good fight. I'm cool about it, but this isn't Tony Habib level like, oh shit, matchmaking. That's like, man, we can really build this thing for months. It's just, that is a little goofy. And then in addition to that, I'm also like, man, I would rather see Jared Cannon there. At this point, I think I really like the trajectory that he's on, and he interests me as a fighter. It seems like he shouldn't be able to do what he is doing. And it seems like at any point, you're going to be like, oh yeah, that's the Cannoneer I thought, or whatever it is. Or he could just keep on winning, and it's like, oh, I guess this size, you know what I mean? I like where he's at. I mean, you could say what I just said about a bunch of different fighters, but I like where he's at. I definitely want to see that happen. And if those two are fighting, I mean, who else? I guess who does he fight now? I mean, does he fight a Yoel, or something coming off of that fight? I don't know, but
that was the fight they should have made, in my opinion. They should have made that fight.
Yeah, and I guess I'd be okay with it. So, I guess we'll have to wait and see.
I like the fight, but maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe it's just who I am. But I marked out more for Brett Johns versus Montel Jackson. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie to you. I marked out more for that fight than Till Whitaker.
Especially in Dublin. Yeah, especially in Dublin, like, or in that side of the world. You know what I mean? You're like, yeah, give that to me.
Yeah, I'm in. Just inject Montel Jackson, Brett Johns, and it just right into my veins. Drake, on a scale of 1 to 10, now that we've seen some of the recent signings by the PFL, how excited are you for season 3?
1 to 10. I I guess a 5. I mean, honestly,
that's better than I thought you were gonna say.
I mean, if 5's like middle, like, because I like MMA, so I'm excited for fights, right? But I don't know, it's just something. Okay, here's, I'll go with a 6. Actually, I'll go a little bit over because I like the addition of new people. That was my big kind of issue with the PFL's style. This is going to be the 3rd season now. So in the second one, I mean, and this was kind of my fear at the beginning of it all, was that we were going to see a lot of unnecessary rematches, the same faces, kind of fighting. Maybe not a bunch of the same people, but we were going to see that, but just a lot of the same, right? Like Lance Palmer's won both of the featherweight tournaments now. Nathan Schulte. There's plenty of people to name off who have been in the tournaments, and fought a lot. So yeah, the fact that they're bringing in new people, I think that is a necessary change to kind of make going forward. You got to keep doing this because otherwise it's just going to be more of the same. I mean, just to go back to Lance Palmer again, what he fought Alex Gilpin like 3 times or whatever, just, it totally should have never fought him more than once or at all, maybe. So, yeah, I'll go with like a 6 just because if 5 is average, just like, yeah, I'm fine either way. I'll go with 6 a little bit just because it's fresher. It's something new.
Yeah, no. Rory's interesting.
Yes.
OAM's interesting. Filthy Tom Lawler has just signed on. He's going to fight at 205. Tom Lawler's just always fun to watch, and his shenanigans. It's always good. I mean, we'll see. I'm probably like, I'm not as excited as Drake. I'm more of his first.
I'm not even that excited.
I'll say a 5, and I'm trying to be as positive as possible. Kyle, I mean, you probably had the first night of PFL circled on your calendar right now. You probably have an alarm set to it.
Listen, I think so. Yeah, the implication here is that I don't care, and that implication would be correct. I don't really care. There's been some cool stories. I like what the PFL has done. It hasn't been enough to like really get me going, but the fact that it's still around, I think, speaks volumes. And the longer it's around, the more interested I'm getting. Like, I may legitimately like really follow this season closely, just because it is an interesting concept and it's stuck around. And there have been some legitimate people that I really didn't know all that much about, who I've learned through watching this, through learning about or reading articles or recaps, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued, especially this. Some of the signings have been good. I mean, listen, anywhere where is it Dandois or Dandia? It's Dandois, and it's Cindy Dandois, right? So anywhere where Cindy Dandois is out there just throwing those punches, I'm going to be a part of it. I'm going to be a part of it. So I'm excited for that.
As long as we get Kayla Harrison versus Cindy Dandois in the first round, I'll be very happy.
Oh my Lord!
Ray Elby says Cindy Dandois.
Yeah, right. Dandois. What else happened? Shane Burgos officially re-signed with the UFC. Good for him. I think he's a really exciting guy.
Good job, UFC.
Looks like Stipe DC is looks like there's some movement on that. Probably in the summertime. Looks like Stipe's eye is not as bad as he had once thought it would be. Obviously, DC put out that cryptic tweet today that all of you guys saw. But I guess I want to end with this. This is going to be sort of a buy-sell question, but we don't really have time for buy-sell. But I want to ask this question because I remember one of my favorite questions on buy-sell of the year was it seemed like we named the entire bantamweight division, and we were like, buy or sell that none of these guys will fight for a title.
Yep.
So right now we got Cejudo and Aldo. We have Piotr Jan and Marlon Moraes. That's booked. Corey Sandhagen got offered to fight with Dominic Cruz for San Diego. From all indications that I'm hearing, I wouldn't say it's in the red zone, but it's close. I'll say it's like past midfield and we're driving. And if it's Tom Brady, then it's probably going to get signed tomorrow. But be that as it may, I guess my question is, where does that leave Aljamain Sterling? From what I've heard and from people I've spoken with, the hand is not healing as quickly as possible. But June, July, summertime is kind of targeting here. But if we're putting all these other fights together, what happens with Aljamain Sterling, Drake Riggs?
I think two options, I should say. Assuming Frankie Edgar wants to, get in that bantamweight mix still, there's a guy, or even, okay, let's make it three options, I guess. A Sunsao and Garbrandt, when is that one? Is that
28th?
Columbus, yeah.
Okay, so a winner of that one, maybe, just depending on how all the timing shakes out. Or, as much as it, pains me to even bring this up or mention it and just put it out there in the atmosphere. Let's assume Sandhagen Cruz does happen. I believe that should be the main event of, whatever card. Anyways, besides the point, assume that gets made official. Sterling on standby, just because you never know with Dominic, man. So, I mean, that's a real thing there. Maybe the most realistic option, depending on how quickly he can heal, then have him get ready for that one, cut the weight, do all the replacement stuff he would need to in case something happens to somebody. Watch, now I'm going to flip it. It's going to be Sandhagen, and we'll get Cruz and Sterling. I'll be fine with that. No, I don't know. Either way, I think you got either that fill-in replacement for another fight, Edgar, maybe a Sunsao Garbrandt winner, even though that one still doesn't really feel quite, right. He's getting left out a bit here, but I would think that the Edgar one is probably the most intriguing. It's very different, kind of out there. That'd be the best case, I guess, in this moment.
I love 135 right now, outside of the title fight. Love 135 so much. There's just so many good fights. Like, even outside of the top 15, I just mentioned the one that I want you to inject into my arm with Brett Johnson, Montel Jackson. But I mean, now Sean O'Malley's back in our lives. This is amazing. I love 135. Someone stop saying 145 is the best division of the UFC. You are crazy if you say that. I'm sorry. You're crazy. Yeah. I like 45. I'd say it's taking a couple of steps forward. But if you're thinking 45 is better than 35, you are high. High. So high. Kyle, would you like to say something, buddy?
Sure. Listen, first of all, the fights that are booked have to happen, and if they don't, Aljamain can always just step in. So that's an X factor. Assuming he can finish getting healed up here, he's got to be ready. I don't know. Sterling hasn't been all that active, and then even when he was active, he got his face knocked off his body. So it's like, I feel bad for Sterling. I feel bad for the position that he's in, but I also understand it. You know, like if you're not super active, and one of the biggest memories we have of you, because his fights aren't very interesting. So the biggest memory we have of you is when you like dabbed as you were unconscious on the octagon, you know, on the mat. Like that's everyone's biggest memory of you, because all the fights are just kind of boring. So he's in a weird position, and you know, I don't want it to be that way. I think he's one of the best people in the division, and I think he should legit at this point should be fighting for the title. I do think that, but I don't. There's just so many good people in the division right now. It's like, dude, your name's just getting forgotten. Like nobody's gonna care. You know, so he's gonna have to somehow find a way to be active. If I'm him, I'm fighting anybody. I don't really care who it is. Just put me in there with somebody, hopefully somebody that I can just beat the shit out of, so I can try to like build back up a little bit here. Hope that somebody drops out of a fight at some point. He can step in, at least get booked. Like he's got to get his name back out there.
How dare you?
What was the last time Jimmy and Sterling was in a boring fight?
Listen, so
Munoz fight, dude.
I'm talking about. Okay, I guess I'm talking about style. So, like the style itself is not all that interesting, and when you're inactive, on top of that, I'm saying the two things combined. Like, I'm not looking at his fights right now. I don't recall ever getting the warm and fuzzies with Aljamain Sterling, really. You know, I don't know. It's and I assume it's just a style thing. Like maybe the fights are, maybe it's good fights, but stylistically is just not something that I'm super into in that moment. I don't know.
I mean, like, I guess I get it. Like, I get it from a certain standpoint. I think his last 4 fights have been great. The Johns fight was great. Stamen fight was good. Munoz, Rivera, he looked good in all those fights. The Augusta Mendes fight, not that great. Not that great. You know, not that great of a fight. But he's gotten better ever since the Moraes knockout. He's looked like a different guy. But that's my take on it.
I mean, the problem is there's a reason though that everybody's still leaving him out of all these equations all the time, and they're not even really trying to. He just keeps getting left out of the equation, not just by the UFC, but by general fandom. And there's a reason for that. You know, why is that? What is the reason? Like it's easy to say it's because you got quite a few people at the top of 135, I guess. But if he's already there at the top of 135 and he has good fights, then what is it? Why is he always getting left out of all these equations?
Because he's not losing.
That's a great point. That's a great point. That's a great point. Oh wow,
checkmate.
He's not losing.
That's it. If he was losing, then
if he lost to Pedro Munoz, he'd be fighting UFC 2.
He'd be fighting. He'd be fighting Cejudo.
Oh man, did you see that cool? Did you see that little stare down, Sterling and Cejudo? I mean, that clearly staged one. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah,
I didn't see that. No,
pretty awesome. Yeah, it's just like a goofy one. You see Cejudo's face, and he's like making that cringy face. He looks over, and there's Sterling, and they get like head to head. It was pretty cool stuff.
Can I say before we go?
Yeah,
I wish I had the conviction of something in my life in the way that Fred, like on the level of the level that Fred hates Henry Cejudo. Like if I wish I had something in my life that I was that, because I'm a very passionate man, generally speaking. That's, you know, I'm a passionate guy. But man, I'm nowhere near as passionate as Fred when it comes to talking about Henry Cejudo. He absolutely hates him, and it's real. This isn't a joke. Like he literally hates him, and it's so funny. You just mention his name, and he will just rant for 5 minutes. You know, and it's a Fred Kirby rant, so it's just laced with profanity and various slurs and whatever else comes out of that guy's mouth when he starts getting all riled up. He absolutely hates him. He hates him. It's so funny. You
have to do like for not safe for work before April Fools. Just do like You don't even know what today's theme is, but do like the top 10 Henry Cejudo cringe quotes. Just play all the clips for him. That'd be awesome. He would lose his shit. He would like light his hair on fire.
So I was gonna do a thing, and I'll. No one knows about this. At least not really outside of our immediate circle. So I'm giving some information out there. So I did this thing a couple times where I bought people on the network a cameo. I don't know if Drake if you even know this, but I bought people a cameo, and I don't remember. I don't remember what all I did, but
I remember.
Oh, I got Keith a cameo with Tito Ortiz, where Tito Ortiz was congratulating him on getting the first stripe on his white belt. I remember that, and he was like taking it so serious, and he was giving him like just keep pushing, keep driving. It was so funny, and there's a couple of Titoisms in there, and then I had Randy Couture, who of course is Captain America. He congratulated Craig on getting his American citizenship. So I was gonna get one for Fred, and I still might. He doesn't listen to this shit. I might get one for Fred where it's because Usman's on there, and I was gonna, and it's kind of lost its thunder now, unfortunately. But he also really just doesn't like Usman apparently. But I was gonna get Usman. I was gonna have Usman do a video for Fred where Usman was apologizing to Fred for beating up Colby Covington. And I thought that'd be such a funny one. And I is it still funny?
I think with Fred involved, I think it'll always be funny.
It's too much time passed for that to be as funny as I want it to be. All right, I'm gonna have Usman apologize to Fred for 30 seconds about beating up Colby Covington. And I'm going to give very specific things that Fred is a staunch Republican, which he's not. He's very much so the opposite, and just loves Colby Covington, has followed his whole career, starting back in whenever. And I really just want Usman to apologize to him for doing what he did on national television to somebody that Fred supports so much. So I'm really, and I think Usman will do it. That's the thing, is I think he would love that. Make it like a whole thing. So I'm really hoping that's going to be the next cameo. So there you go. Fred this will never get back to Fred. So he's not gonna know.
John Franklin.
Yep, he's gonna
John's gonna
Why don't you do it, John?
Hey Fred, you're gonna get your Camaro cameo. Yeah, he's gonna blow it. Totally. So maybe like Venmo him like $15 to keep his mouth shut.
There you go.
Yeah. There you go. All right, we're gonna get out of here. I mean, just so much to discuss. There's a lot more we could have gotten to as well, but we're at that point. I gotta say, I finally started watching Ozark. Never watched a second of it. Now I'm completely hooked. I'm about to start season 2 and get ready for season 3 to drop. Even my wife likes Ozark. We don't agree on any shows these days.
Hot take shades.
Go get him. Go get him.
Ozark is incredible. Let me just tell you, some of the best, the last X amount of Netflix shows that my wife and I have watched have been some of my favorite shows I've ever seen. And listen, Love is Blind, just wonderful. Game show, like a game show, like a reality game show. Love is Blind, fantastic. Next
game show?
It's like a reality, like where they Love is Blind, where they don't meet each other and they propose, and once they propose, they meet each other, and then it's to see if they can actually get married at the end. They do a reunion show. It's like The Bachelor type of a thing, you know what I mean? But it's like and then The Circle, which is like this weird like social networking based game show where again they can't see each other and they all go off their profiles and they vote for the best and they become influencers, and it's a really weird thing. And then Next in Fashion, hosted by my boy Tan from Queer Eye. Listen, just some fantastic shows. So if you are someone with fragile masculinity and you just can't be open to those kind of shows, let me tell you, dude, you just got to wipe it away. Go watch dude. Next in Fashion was such an awesome show. You just go do it. You just got to go do it. And if you haven't watched Queer Eye yet, then I don't even know what there's no reason for us to even talk.
All right.
I started watching Servant, that M. Night Shyamalan series, which is pretty trippy. So interesting.
I went back and watched all of Breaking Bad again
See,
in
Mike,
a week.
Mike is
In a week.
this is Mike just trying to prove his manliness. He's like, you know what? Now that Kyle just talked about all that, I need to reference Breaking Bad.
Dude.
Better Call Saul is so good too.
I'll drop some bombshells on you right now. I used to watch 90210. I did. I used to watch the Creek. I used to watch the Dawson.
There you go.
My wife is like blown away by the knowledge I have of both of those shows. It's nuts. It's nuts. Did I watch The Hills? Damn right.
Of course you did.
Damn
buddy.
right I watched The Hills.
Love
LC.
Lord. Love
LC
Lord. Yeah,
Hyde,
you go. There you go.
That was Camaro and Colby.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, listen, it happens. It happens. Yeah. I still go back and watch Boy Meets World episodes. I'm like a child, and I just like everything. I like everything.
Good job.
We try. And I have to check out those shows too. The fashion one.
Next is Blind.
Awesome. Love is Blind. I gotta check out too. But before we get out of here, Kyle, what's going on, man? Anything you want to let the folks know about?
Oh boy. Listen, check out the rest of the shows on the network. We got some really good stuff. I'm very proud of the little network that could. And I'm very proud of the shows we have. So please go check them out between the links, of course, with Mike Heck and Not Safe for Work with yours truly, and other shows on the network. You got the MMA Takeover on Fridays. Keith is doing a really awesome job on not only giving current news and doing the one-man show thing, which I think he's very good at, but he's also exposing our audience to fighters that maybe they haven't followed yet or heard of yet or whatever it is. And he talked a really good interview, the one that that's coming up this week. So I'm excited to check that one out.
Ariane Zekti.
Yes, he is fantastic. I actually interviewed him. Oh man, it was been a while ago. It would have been probably 2 years ago. I think he was like 3-0 at the time. And we had an interview that was about an hour. So if you go on SoundCloud and search his name up, you'll be able to find this interview that I did with him way back in the day. And it was good. It lasted an hour for a reason, because it was a really entertaining conversation to be a part of.
For up and coming guys and gals in the MMA media space, if you follow me for a while, I always tell you, like, if you're just getting into this, you need to interview everybody. You need to get your reps in. And the prime example of interview everybody is Ariane Zekti. That is one of those guys that like always sticks out to me. It was Shorty Torres. I interviewed Shorty Torres before he made his pro debut. And I was like, holy shit, this kid is something else. And then Ariane Zekti was the other time, like a local regional fighter who had like 1 or 2 pro fights, just completely blew me away with this personality.
The fact that Jared Brooks and Jose Torres are not in the UFC is an absolute crime. It makes no sense. Nope. Like, it makes especially the rise of Davison Figueiredo and how Brooks looked in that fight. I mean, seriously, he did. I agree. Like, I'm there too. I'm a Jordan Brooks mark though, so it's one of those, like, it is what it is. But it's like he won that fight. You know what I mean? And not only that, he's beating the shit out of Jose Torres. He just knocks himself out. It is what it is. Crazy. Like, that guy was incredible. And then Jose Torres, again, maybe he didn't do as well as we were hoping, but he's still really skilled on the mic and is going to keep getting better and is young. The fact that when they got rid of him, I was like, okay, yeah, they're shutting the division down. But if you're not going to shut the division down, well, go snag some of those people back up. It doesn't make any sense for them to not be there. The show's already over, but yeah, it makes those.
It's all right. We're still going. This is what Barbershop Talk's all about. Drake, what do you got going on, my man?
I got some things, we got UFC Brasilia coming up here. Spoke to Random Marcos. You can find that one on the scrap and on my YouTube channel, Drake Riggs, just my name. Then today, dropped that Mac Malley chat story that, we talked about at the beginning here, the big, great reveal. If you really like some silly readings and, very interesting, goofy kind of stories, that is right up your alley. Definitely check it out. Just a fun old time doing that one and all that. And then, got some projects in the works, some video list type things going to be coming out. Let's see, some other introspective kind of looks at, the greatest women's fights of all time, because that's kind of a big topic right now. I'll be spoke to Jessica Andrade recently as well. Caught up with her before that big fight with Rose, which, I guess that one's in jeopardy too, right? Hopefully that happens. UFC 249.
Yeah.
That'll be dropping next week on my MMA news, so look for that one. I think that's about it, but kind of crazy schedule at the moment. So just follow me on Twitter.
There you go. You can see it right there. What have I done this week? I had a great talk with Andre Ewell yesterday. Highly recommend you check that one out. I'm pretty sure it was his first interview since UFC 247. Jonathan Martinez, we heard from him quite a bit. But Andre Ewell finally gives his side of that fight that was very controversial. And if you think he had nice things to say about Joe Rogan, you would be incorrect, because he has some things to say about Joe Rogan and the way he commentated that fight. And he legit feels like Joe Rogan bet against him, and he's pissed that he bet against him, and that's it. Like, he's truly convinced of this. So definitely a good interview to check out. I got some good prospect interviews coming up tomorrow. And there will be some news coming soon. I'm going to leave that out there. Some cool announcements to be made in the near future. Hopefully in the next 2 weeks, I should be able to reveal that information. But for the time being, hopefully everybody's is okay. Hopefully everyone can stay safe and quarantined. And this coronavirus is the real deal, people. I mean, like I think Kyle said it best. So if you missed what he said, you're gonna have to rewind the damn thing, because it was too good and I can't do it better. So for Kyle, for Drake, I am Mike Heck. Craig Allen, wherever he is, playing Christian League hockey somewhere in Canada. No need to be scripted. Got to go off the cuff, bro.
There it is.
Peace in your crease.